David, great to have you on the podcast. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
This is your first time ever coming on the show. So, what I like to do with first time guests is would love if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself first and then and a company overview. And then we'll just go into a nice casual chat.
Sure. Happily. I'm the CEO of Stereotaxis. We're a publicly traded company. We make a robot used in minimally invasive heart surgeries. The company is commercial, but we're still a smaller company with about 150 employees based in St. Louis. Our robots are used in about 100 hospitals around the world, have treated about 150,000 patients to date. And we like robots and we like medicine. And my background, I've been in medical devices for about 20 years, mainly on the investing side, but always kind of focused on cutting edge medical tech. And that's what I like.
Talk to our audience because some people in our audience are going to immediately hear what you're doing and say makes total sense. And there will be others that said, I didn't think of that before." Why why do robots make sense in this space? Just, period.
So if you want to step back even farther and say, why do robots make sense in surgery?
Let's
Is
do it.
that, and you do have, right? So the real leader who pioneered robotics in surgery as a whole is a company called Intuitive Surgical in the Bay Area. They make the Vinci robot. There's about 10,000 Da Vinci robots out there right now treating millions of patients a year. Robots in surgery is a thing. It's not just a niche anymore. It's really kind of dramatically transforming medical care across many medical specialties. If you want to say why, from a very high level, does a robot in surgery make sense? I'd say that a physician who's treating a patient, in a procedure, so kind of in a surgical setting, has to have two major skill sets in order to be a good surgeon. One is they have to understand the patient, understand the disease, understand the design of the therapy that they're trying to deliver, right? And they have to have that cognitive skill of being able to understand what's actually going on and how do I want to treat the patient. The second big skill they have to have is to use the tools at their disposal, whether they're surgical tools they're holding in their hands or laparoscopic tools, or in our case, catheters. And they have to use whatever tools they have at their disposal to actually execute the procedure as they think about it. Like all of us, right, our skill level in different aspects of skills, some are better, some are worse. And so you can have physicians that are fantastic on the cognitive side, but have less than average hand motor skills. And you can have the reverse. And you have obviously, hopefully, the surgeon who's operating on you has both of them in a fantastic way, but you'll have a mix of that. And as, let's say, we age, naturally, our cognitive skill might actually go up over the years and years of experience, while our hand motor skills go slightly down. And so there's that mix. Robots allow you to, one, have the surgeon focus most on the cognitive aspect of the procedure with simplifying and reducing the risk and reducing the complexity of the mechanical aspect of the procedure. Even beyond that, robots can allow you to design tools that can't be manipulated by the human hand. And so you can allow kind of manipulations and aspects of a procedure to be performed that otherwise just wouldn't be possible at all. And so that's, I think, from a very high level, that's why robots are helpful in surgery. They allow, the same way that a car can be viewed as a robot, it allows us to run faster than we would ever run. Right? Robots allow surgeons to do things that they would never otherwise be able to do, and to do it kind of with more of an ability to focus on the cognitive aspect of the procedure rather than the mechanical stress.
Talk us through, I know that robotics and surgery in general has made huge leaps over the years. And it just seems like the pace of acceleration just keeps going faster and faster of what we're able to accomplish. But what limitations still exist today? And maybe these could be limitations that you don't think much of. You think we'll move past them fairly quickly. But what are some of those limitations that you still see today? And is it more of just a blocker with a lot of people in terms of resistance to wanting to go all in on this? I'll let you answer.
Like in any complex aspect of our lives and in the world, there's many limitations in all sorts of different dimensions. So you can answer this kind of in a dozen different ways. Yes, there are societal still. There was, I remember even, let's say 10, 15 years ago, there was still a stigma, robot surgery, and what does that mean? And some people viewed it negatively. I think that has over time, both our collective mind gets more and more used to new concepts, and then you have more and more data that shows the benefits of robotics in a broad spectrum of procedures, and so that kind of gradually gets reduced. And you can talk about the cost aspect. So there's certain areas in the US we're clearly leading the world in terms of the adoption of robotics for surgery. There's other countries which use it still somewhat sparingly, but then you have countries like England, which has the national health system, which is relatively cost conscious, and they're now also jumping all into robotics. So there's kind of there's many, many things we could talk about from a technology perspective. I'd say robotics has predominantly impacted and improved the mechanical aspects of the procedures, precision, stability, safety. And probably if you step back and look at things with a larger lens of history over the next 10, 20 years, it will also very much be beneficial from a cognitive perspective. How do you provide the right information to the physician to help them make decisions, to help them plan the procedure better? And so kind of there's many things we can talk about. I'd say the area actually where we focus the most, where Stereotaxis is most focused, is that you can think about surgeries in three big categories: open surgery, right? An open incision, kind of holding tools with your hands and doing the surgery kind of over the patient. Laparoscopic surgery, where you use a few laparoscopes, kind of 3, 4, 5 small incisions in the abdomen or chest area. And then endovascular surgery, which is a huge category of surgery. There's tens of millions of procedures done a year, kind of in this category of endovascular procedures. And you use a catheter inserted into the blood vessels, usually in the leg or in the arm, and then they go, twisting this catheter through the blood vessels to the heart or to the brain or to any other parts of the body. And that whole category of endovascular surgery hasn't had essentially any robotics in it. We are, like I mentioned before, a relatively small company, 150 employees, 100 hospitals that use our robot, and we're the only one that's commercializing an endovascular robot. And so that is the frontier of medical robotics, where we're kind of carrying the flag and trying to make our positive impact on the world. And that's kind of, so that's if we have to hone in on there's multiple frontiers, multiple barriers, but I'd say that's the one we're the most focused on.
Why do you think this has been a place that hasn't, your particular focus has not been a place that we've seen maybe beyond stereotaxis, like much innovation in over the years?
So if you think about it, try to kind of picture in your mind an open surgery where you're kind of, a physician holding tools in their hands and kind of doing, an incision, cutting and kind of doing cautery and trying to stitch two tissues together. Or think about laparoscopic surgery where you have kind of these rigid functional sticks, to say it in the least elegant way possible, a functional stick with a scissor at the end or a grasper on the end. Those, you can kind of imagine those being done robotically, and it kind of seems like an industrial robot that you would imagine on the car floor, obviously much smaller and has to have much finer movements, but kind of you can imagine those robots. Now think about little catheters, really kind of, sometimes really the width of your hair, right? And sometimes they're a millimeter in diameter or 2 millimeters in diameter, but, tiny, tiny little things. And they have to move through twisting and turning blood vessels, tortuous vasculature. What you typically think about a robot doesn't make sense anymore, right? You can't think about straight lines. You can't think about hard metal. You have to think about soft plastic that is able to do twists and bends and turns and can still be moved with precision and stability and a great safety profile. And that kind of means you have to start thinking about completely different robots. And so a few of the robotic mechanisms that have been tried for endovascular surgery, and none of them ultimately really ended up providing enough clinical value to kind of get exit velocity. And what they really tried to do is just mimic the human hand. So you'd use exactly the same catheters that you would use otherwise, and just instead of the physician holding on to one end of the catheter with their hands, you had some mechanical grasper that was mimicking their hands, allowed the physician to not have to hold the catheter and to be sitting at a joystick, but essentially didn't provide any ability to do anything beyond what a normal catheter could do. If you think of the main mechanistic weakness of catheters, the ones held by humans' hand, and kind of in that example of a robot that would be holding it, is that you're applying forces on the base of a catheter, right? But the procedure is happening 2, 3, 4 feet away at the other end of this flexible catheter. So imagine holding on to a gardening hose, but holding it 4 feet back from the nozzle, or holding onto a pencil, though a pencil is rigid. These aren't rigid, but holding it from the eraser rather than from the edge of from the tip kind of the pencil. And so that kind of, you can make that aspect robotic, the control from the handle, make it kind of as precise, as perfectly stable as you want. The tip still isn't going to be precise and still isn't going to be stable because you're holding it kind of, several feet away back, and it's a flexible device. So what we did to kind of overcome that, and that's where our mechanism of action for robotics is very unique. And oftentimes we say a robot or a robot, but the mechanism of action is actually the critical nature that distinguishes one robot from another, is that we use very precisely applied magnetic fields to allow you to have direct control of the tip of a flexible device. And so imagine now a catheter that is normally moved from a patient's leg up into their heart, and then you want to kind of find very precise parts of the heart to ablate or to kind of to treat the patient. And instead of having this catheter pivoted from the base, you place tiny little magnets in the distal tip. And now your robot are magnets that are on both sides, on both shoulders of the patient. And when a physician sitting at a cockpit computer says, I want to move the catheter in this direction or that direction, we adjust the magnetic fields with 1 millimeter accuracy, and the catheter can now be moved with 1 millimeter precision in the patient's heart. That is kind of how our robot looks like in the cath lab environment. And that's kind of the mechanism of action that allows us to bypass all the mechanical issues with typical catheters.
David, where do you head from here? Obviously, you mentioned it earlier. You're still a relatively, small company. You're growing. You've obviously congrats on everything that you've accomplished so far. Where do you go from here?
We've been innovating. So we've really kind of all of our experience to date, the 150,000 plus patients that have been treated with our system have been done with essentially first generation technologies. And so we've been kind of over the last 6, 7 years, we've been investing in a scale of 50 to $100 million in a broad-based R&D effort. And that R&D effort has been mainly on kind of three main thrusts. One is, how do we make our robot something that is broadly accessible to hospitals? So to date, every time a hospital wants to adopt our robot, it requires construction of a special room to accommodate our robot. How do we make it something that if a hospital wants to try it, we can come in on the weekend, give them the robot, and if they decide that they don't want it, we can go and take it out. And so that's kind of been one thing. You can build the coolest, most useful things in the world, but if it's not accessible, its impact is muted. The second big thing is, how do we make the catheters that are available with our robot much better? And so it is an interplay between the robot and the catheters they drive. And essentially all of our experience has been with a first generation catheter. And we want catheters that aren't just helpful for one cardiac procedure, but for a broader range, from stroke patients to cardiac patients to lower limb ischemia patients and everything in between. And then the third big thing is, how do we start in a more meaningful way to implement intelligence into the robot? How do you integrate diagnostic data presented to the physician in the right way? How do you implement automation routines? How do you kind of implement good decision support capabilities with AI and machine learning, and kind of learning over the tens of thousands of procedures, how to give guidance to the physician, how to make better decisions intraoperatively. And so those are kind of some of the things that we've been working on. Those are kind of the three main thrusts of our innovation efforts.
What's like one thing that you wish more prospects knew, but maybe they don't, about what you've been doing?
I think that kind of many people look at things in a very narrow fashion and don't understand the bigger course of history or the bigger arc of history. And that's where I'd say that we've seen 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when Intuitive Surgical was starting to commercialize the Da Vinci system, many people thought about it as a urology robot to do prostatectomies, and didn't have the view of how laparoscopic surgery as a whole could be transformed, and how the Da Vinci robot actually served as a platform more broadly for laparoscopic surgery. The same thing happened in the orthopedic space with the hip, knee, and spine robots. And those probably evolved about a decade after the Da Vinci system in terms of their ramp in the world. But those also, now there are thousands of them in the world. And I think that kind of people are oftentimes myopic, where they see something that is able to do a specific things currently, but they're not able to view it in that platform potential. And that's on us, obviously, to change that and to make the robot start to demonstrate value across clinical applications. But that's definitely how we think about things. And I'd say most people don't manage to grasp that particularly quickly.
I like it. David, I want to thank you so much for joining me here today and sharing some about what you've been building, and kudos again to you and the team for all that you've built. Where can people learn more if they want to either connect with you or dive deeper into the company?
So we're publicly traded and listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker STXS. We have a lot of information on our website. We try to make it very informative. We have a lot of clinical information. We have a database of 500 some publications, every publication on our system, on our website. You want transparency of data, you want transparency of kind of information. So we try to kind of build that in a way. We're on social media, happy to be followed there. And if you're ever in St. Louis, you're invited for a visit.
I would love to. Yeah, this is actually so. I used to go to St. Louis when this company,
Huh?
SteadyMD, they bought my last startup, and used to
Awesome.
go there quite a bit. Easiest airport ever. No, people that haven't been there don't realize. And really good French restaurant downtown that was like like phenomenal steak. The food scene's pretty good there. I don't
Yep.
think people sleep on St. Louis. The food is good there.
Yeah, we're about 10 blocks from the Arch, right in downtown. We have a good office. We build all our robots there. You can see how robots get built. We have functional cath labs where you can drive our robots. So we have a good setup, and it's a great place.
I will have to try to make it. That'd be a cool segment to do. So appreciate that. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that offline. I think that'd be cool.
Awesome.
David, thanks so much for joining me here today. Best of luck.
Thanks a lot.